Great. Yeah, so we're plugging along in story. I think we've made a couple of adjustments to the story. I think this is pretty normal where we take our story animatic, we put it into previs layout, and as we start to create the shots based on the storyboards, we do see either some compositions or cinematography that need to be adjusted, or we see some places where we can enhance the humor, we can enhance the clarity, and our goal is to not to add more time, but to just go for entertainment and clarity. So we're just continuing to do that as we're pushing through the layout, the previs.
All right, so this week I was picking up some work from Rex. That was still the grooming from last week, but this week I added some more detail, some more individual hair strands on top of his hair to break up the evenness, so to speak. So these are a few renders. And at the same time, I also tried rendering the animation that Rick made last week. And that's mainly to figure out what, first how it works, how this whole style works in either in ones on twos, how it looks like rendered, but then also to test out the rendering pipeline for this. So I'm not sure it'll probably not come across in the stream, but this is the animation on ones, and it's super smooth and everything. And then I also rendered the animation on twos, and it's a slightly different look. So I was busy with that most of the week. I did a few iterations of this with an environment, and then in the end with the final shading from Simon that he was doing. This is probably not the latest one, but this is just a work in progress. To test this up, I also did an Eevee render. So this is how this looks like. It's a very good preview to see this whole thing unfold super quickly. And yeah, that was, then I had another shot. This is a work in progress from what Pablico is animating. The animation for this has changed, but this is kind of a promo meet Rex animation. And yeah, I just set up a lighting for this and environment, and I will probably experiment with a few different lighting scenarios, or maybe like a background that we can use for promo. But this is also another just work in progress. And yeah, that's pretty much my week.
Okay, this week was spent pretty much equally on characters' eyes, standardizing them, looking at the issues, trying to find some solutions of like and looking through all the characters. Ellie, the default was at 0. This is how it was given to me by Sculpt. Through the sculpt, but in the default of the expression sheets, there was a slight rotation. So I adjusted that to the Ellie character, so she's more consistent to the default that Julien had. And this is just the upper level, looking at the up view where the eyelids are, the shape is quite well preserved. I had to recreate on the new default eyeballs the new shapes for grow and shrink, so those were recreated. Also, Rex, just today, this is just from today, we received some, Julien had passed me some new eyeballs. This is the old one on the left, the new one on the right. So they're a lot larger so that there's more of a flat look to his eyes, whereas he was the only one that had the very small rounded shape that had more of a bulge. So this is the new eyeballs for Rex. One thing that I'm looking at right now that I'm setting it up for rigging, preparing it for rigging, and the last parts that I just need to do is adjust the eyelids so that they fit the eyeball, the new eyeball, and recreate the iris shapes. Topology, the handkerchief she wears around her neck. What I did here is just connect the front to the back, so at least that the bow can connect, have an anchor to connect for rigging, so that these two parts are not loose. And so this is the sculpt on the left, retope on the right. Boots. I started on her boots. It's almost complete. So this is the sculpted boots. Has some bevel and some sharp creases. And so what I do, okay, this is the sculpt boot. And what I look at here is the intersection of below the ground level, and then also it raises up higher on this end. So what I do is I recreate it so that it's more flat, flush to the ground. So basically I took this shape and then restarted it almost from scratch. And this is the new sculpt where it's flush to the ground. Underneath, what I did was this time I brought the boot over, the sole over to the center and created a mirrored image of it, and then added asymmetry. So this is this sculpt, and then the final boot. These are without any modifiers on, except this one has the bevel and the edge creases. With the retopo, I try to make the shape so that we don't depend on these. That's the loop at the back of her boot, her Doc Martens, and so I just cleaned up the shape a little bit so it's more like if it was sewn together and tucked into her boot. The socks, I just finished up the shape at the top and then the bottom, just cleaned it up. So you can see that on the left is the sculpt, and on the right it sort of looks more like a sock, where instead of intersecting into her leg, it has more of a rounded shape. And the laces were also reduced in geometry. And this is the work in progress that I have so far with the boot, creating it in symmetrical shape. And the scrunchie, that's another work in progress. So that's it for me.
So just today was an extra day of Rex polish. And so now his shoulders should behave hopefully nicer, although currently the materials are dead. But if you see the Y-frame, it stays a bit more, well, the V shape doesn't get broken as much and doesn't have like a sharp bend in it. So I hope that is what we wanted. And also the color doesn't follow the shoulder 1-to-1 anymore, but only like 20%. Also, the colors controls are no longer flippy bendy bones, but just regular old bones. And then what else? The watch got some pretty bone shapes. Let me get my list, wait. Oh, there were some rogue weights on his face. That was just me accidentally clicking on his ears at some point. And then his nose started affecting his ears, so that's fixed. There was also some troubles with getting his particle hair to show up in renders in specific cases. So it required some hacking, but it's fixed. What else? On Pablo's request, there is now lattices for his waist. So you can tweak this for specific poses. Rick didn't request this, but I saw that he was using the cheek lattice to deform the lips. So I just added one that's actually, meant for the lips. What else? Oh, right, his spine. I added an extra spine control, which is, where is it? This guy, which took half the influence of the previous first spine control. So now when he bends forward, it deforms a bit nicer. And also you can control it in more detail. Because before, you could only basically move these two as one unit. Now you can just take the top part of his hips instead of the whole thing. What else? Let's see. There was a problem with the mouth clipping on the right side, so there was an asymmetry issue, which is now fixed again. But then again, this comes up like once every 2 weeks, but maybe not anymore if I get lucky. And then, going back in time, let's look at Ellie, who is not in such an amazing shape yet, but at least you can open her mouth, I hope. Yes, and that's about it. I mean, and she also has some lip controls that are functioning. And so this was all copied over from Rex. So this stuff works, this stuff works, this stuff works, the teeth follow mouth thing. So yeah, some things with the mouth are working. The smile does not work yet. That will come next. And then blink doesn't work yet. Eyebrows might work. Kind of work. So yeah, that's about it for Ellie. And then I think I'll just stop there. That covers most things. The rest is just like fixing bugs in Cloud Rig and whatnot. So yeah, let's call it that.
I did a variety of things this week, but of course I don't remember all of it. But there were a lot of interesting meetings. I took a fun snapshot of one of the meetings, so that's kind of fun. It's been a while since I've seen Basam. This is a meeting about the potential upcoming post library feature, which I'm very excited about. I have been mostly working on kind of this sequence here, making sure that this all makes sense. I did some tests with this thing where I tried splitting this one shot up into 2 shots, basically because the way it was in the edit, it was kind of aiming for a particular thing in the first half of the shot, and the way it was drawn, it felt like it was more of a narrow lens, and then the second side of that shot was very much going for this kind of wide lens, very cool staging. And then how do you kind of compromise it by having the same lens? And so I was trying to make some compromises. I wanted to try a version where I split it up into 2 shots. So I had some versions of that, and then I ended up kind of making just a lot of compromises and faking a lot of stuff. So that's the version D that I have in my weekly folder, is kind of where we ended up, and I'm quite happy with it. There's some stuff that there's some stuff where I deviated a little bit away from the way it is in the edit, just because of how things have changed a little bit. So, for example, the ponytail used to be on the other side, and with that, it kind of, just the way it was, the staging was, it kind of made more sense. I mean, yeah, it used to make more sense, basically, and then I kind of rearranged it, and I pitched the idea of maybe having her more in the center and arranging it a little bit more like this. It had just a tiny bit of implications when it came to the actual choreography that was about to follow, but that's the thing I've been kind of working on now. There are some small tweaks that I have to still do here and there, but I have done like the kind of choreography of the next shot that comes after the vignette of the sprites. But then also with the 3 kind of vignettes of the sprites, we have kind of new ones here, where he's kind of fixing a broken wing of a butterfly, which is going to be tied up to Phil kind of burning the butterflies. So one of them will kind of escape with a mangled wing, and then there's some CPR action going on. I sprinkled in some sound effects. I mean, they're not perfect or anything, but it's just to kind of make the joke work. I also, as I kind of went through this, I'm actually voicing this line, and I voiced it while I was in Iceland underneath some sheets, and I'm way too close, and I'm holding an iPhone, and I'm now cringing when I hear it because it's been a while since I listened to it. So I kind of want to just re-record that, or maybe get Mike to help me out with that. But yeah, in my weekly folder, there is a version here that has like the kind of latest of this scene that I've been working on. But there are things that I want to still be tweaking and fixing and whatnot.
So on Monday, I pretty much dedicated the entire day of just polishing up some of the work files and uploading them to the cloud too. So now all the expression test files are also on the cloud for all the characters, including the sprites sculpting files, which were still missing. They're also now on the cloud. So anyone can just like open these up, go through the expressions and see what I did there. And then I basically just immediately went to look at, this week I worked on the environments. This is the first week that I actually get to work on that. So I took a look at the trees that we had, and I was thinking of maybe polishing up the shape overall a bit more. Oh, this doesn't go full screen, sadly. So the idea that I had was just to kind of clean up the shapes a bit more, make them a bit more simplified. We have that currently with 3 of the trees, which are overall very like lumpy and curvy, but I was thinking if we could exaggerate them more. This is also missing all the branches. There's also a rendered version of this. Try to go over here. Just an Eevee with very minimal shading and shadows. But this is generally the idea. So I just kind of went into one of the sets, which is the Mushroom Grove, and just placed some of these trees in, 2 of the characters, and also the mushrooms that we had. And just wanted to get like a bit of a feel of them. I also then made a rendered version and made some more adjustments. So these 3 trees were kind of like the test for that, just to try something simpler. And I scattered some different mushrooms in there, which are, if I close this up, so the first thing that I did for the other assets was just to make more mushroom variations. So there are different types, which are like more low flat types, more Sprite-like looking, more tall, or more rounded. So we can kind of group them up and make some more interesting patches of mushrooms in the scenes. The shading is still temp, but that's not what I'm working on right now. Then I also started working and planning and working on some other environment assets. The only ones that I actually got to really work on were the bluebells, just kind of making them a bit more chunky, removing some of the random displacement from the leaves, and the stalk is just generally one single curve, one simple motion basically, and the bluebell flowers themselves are kind of grouped more together, so it looks more like a single shape. And then I was just talking with the team about the characters as well, just because there's the whole eye discussion going on. And one interesting little thing that was also in there is just because a lot of the characters have a very slanted face. When you want the pupil in the middle of the eye, they're actually looking upwards. So there's going to be a bit of cheating going on with what is actually the neutral position of the eyes, because they're going to be looking towards the center and kind of looking upwards, but it's going to appear like they're looking straight ahead. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's basically it for my week.
I did some different version of this animation, so I just gonna play the last one. Yeah, that's what it is. Like yeah, it was like different versions with like first it was like with some it was kissing the butt and everything, but that thing went out of the idea. So we were talking about, I was having some feedback and then just finish it up. I had some smear frames, and that's the end. I don't know how it looks, how good it looks or not, but I mean it will be on the log probably when I have a comment somewhere there. Is it special for this meeting? Yes, it is, and it will be later transferred to shapes, I think, or something like that. I don't know. Someone magic that is not my field.
I happen to be working on potentially the first animated shot of the movie, which is Rex beer burping, or burping from beer. So first 3 days of the week, I did some reference and I drank a lot of beer, and then started anime. Of course, you gotta do some reference to make sure it's all correct. So let me share my screen.
Is it going to be number 8?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can take a look at number 8. Number 7 is a slight different with the eyes in the end. It's like relaxing the eyes more in the end. Of course, yeah, the feedback of this meeting is not. I don't think you hear audio as well, do you? Do you? No. Okay. So
you can always reenact it if you want, Rick. if you want to add
burr.
anything.
It's in the Dropbox folder if you want to take a look at it. But that's what I've been spending time on, besides giving some additional feedback on things you encounter when animating. And I think these shots are great for testing the rigs and fine tuning and polishing the rigs for further use. So, but that's what I did.
Yep. Yes, beginning of the week I still recorded a video about the pipeline tool, but that was about my work from last week. Yeah, I wanted to focus this week on getting some shading work on the general skin shaders that we want the characters to have, starting with Rex, which is the character we're starting with first in the pipeline. Yeah, just generally looking at how the skin should look. The general idea was that it should look soft, but not too reliant on subsurface scattering. So I tuned down the subsurface scattering from what it was before. These are just some renderings in different lighting scenarios of the skin shader as it is right now. Maybe there were some slight adjustments after. There's some posing. Oh, this is not the right one, sorry. Yeah, so this was just a recording where you can see it from different angles with Eevee. So yeah, the way it works is that there's no bump on top of the surface. It's just a very subtle color variation for the detail because we want to simplify it in general for fitting the general style. But with the details, still there's the question how it should behave with deformation with the rig, and there are different options how to handle that. So either it moves completely with the mouth or completely detached, which both doesn't look great. So here, not sure how visible this is from the recording, but here it moved completely, here it doesn't move at all, and probably somewhere in between, which is just possible with some UV transform with a UV transform modifier. You can get something in between which actually looks quite nice, similar to how skin would actually deform. Yeah, and then also I had this idea for a while, but also because Rick brought it up again, I wanted to take a look at actually adding some displacement detail to the shading of specific materials like Rex's sweater vest, because this is already the displacement, but without the displacement it's really flat and it doesn't really support the particular detail that the sweater vest has and its shading in general to be this flat, especially on the edges where it should be a little bit rippled. So I just created from the procedural shader that I have on here just an additional displacement map that has all the basic information for the displacement and applied it. And this doesn't come at a higher cost for the subdivision level that we already have, so it only adds a little bit to the render time, but we can just switch it off for the shots where we don't need it because we don't see it in detail. And yeah, then I worked a little bit on the eyebrows. I just created a very basic shader to indicate the direction of the hair. And yeah, the question with the eyebrows is mostly the deformation as well, because they deform quite a lot, and then the direction doesn't really make sense anymore, or it doesn't look very good in general. Before, the eyebrows just had a very basic shading without the texture at all, and so I made a comparison of having the texture as I created it in general on the very right with the deformation, which is quite noticeable, then a midway point and completely without it. Sorry for the black frame in the end. I exported it from Olive and it didn't quite work. Yeah, but so this is not Sprite related, but I'm going to show it anyways because I spent some time this week, and this is the weekly, on geometry nodes, which I'm also involved in, and I created the demo file to just show the new nodes that we have added to the geometry node project for scattering things like flowers and grass here. I just hijacked some of Andy's assets after asking him and created this sample file. Yeah, so this is all node-based scattering of things. just to also show this here very quickly. And yeah, that's my week.
So on Monday, I finally finished the Meeting Outer Sprite painting, mostly adding some background flowers and some foreground grass. And then I was tasked to slightly make some adjustments to the butterfly design, making it a bit more poppy and colorful. And then making a version that is scorched from flying over the barbecue grill, and then how it could maybe look like when the sprites have fixed it up and painted back the dots on the butterfly. And then I was exploring the Sprite village and seeing how the layout could be a bit more fancy and recognizable, and where Elder Sprite could be emerging from, and what kind of tree he's living in. Yeah, some top-down views, more naturalistic approach to the whole scene. And this is not showing the videos. I also made a very short video about how the Meeting Outer Sprite painting came together. Yeah. And a video just showing how I used the warp tool in Krita, putting some moss on boulder in sample. And then, yeah, and that's it.